Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to never miss an update. Join the only official Telegram channel of RAU'S IAS Study Circle to get relevant material and important updates.
Hello everyone and welcome to Daily News Simplified, your one-stop solution to detailed analysis of current affairs which are published in the daily edition of Hindu newspaper and are equally relevant for your UPSC preparation. Articles dated 11th of January 2022 are listed on your screen and the timestamping for these articles is already given in the description box. So let us begin with the first article for the day. This article got published on page 8 of daily edition Hindu newspaper and talks about the India-South Korea and its trade relationship. The context of the article says that India and South Africa will hold a round of talks to improve their bilateral trade, and this will be taken up by the Union Minister of Commerce and Industry. The discussion will focus on addressing the large trade deficit in favor of South Korea, market access that is associated with India in Korean market, non-tariff barriers which India is facing as an exporter, and other related issues. From this article, it is important for us to understand the India-South Korea relationship in different dimensions. So for that matter, it is relevant for your General Studies Paper 2, International Relations. As UPSC often asks on one or two nations in this paper and India's relationship with these countries, it is important for us to look into different dimensions between both these nations. So, from that perspective, the content of this article would include the historical aspect between both these nations, recent developments, and relation of these nations on different aspect parameters including defense, economy, soft diplomacy, cultural relations, and others. As far as history of this relationship is concerned, well, India sent its one of the foreign secretary or the first foreign secretary KPS Menon, who served as a chairperson to the 9-member committee which was constituted as UN Commission on Korea. And this committee had a duty to oversee the elections which were to be conducted in Korea. After the Korean War, United Nations passed a resolution, and this resolution was actually sponsored by India to call for ceasefire because both North Korea, which was sponsored by the communist forces under the USSR, and South Korea, which was supported by the capitalist forces under the United States. As this was the phase of starting or the beginning of the Cold War, both these newly independent nations were fighting with each other. And after the passage of the resolution, there was a ceasefire which was declared on 27th of July 1953 and an international border was created. But still, the issue remains unresolved. So this was the first phase when India became an active participant as far as South Korea is concerned. South Korea is one of the major players in India's Look East policy, and India on the other hand is one of the best partner in New Southern policy of South Korea. Both these policies reflect the view these countries are holding towards each other and also showcases the aspect of good relationship in the future. As far as recent developments are concerned, well, India's Defense Minister Rajnath Singh has visited South Korea and signed a military logistic agreement. Military logistic agreement means that these countries will provide support, accessibility, and convenience as far as military defense equipments and logistics are concerned. It simply means that if tomorrow any of the defense equipment arrives or travel by Indian Ocean, they can anchor in India. And similarly, India's defense establishment, warships, even planes can harbor in South Korea. This will provide the extra push towards India's strategic growth not only in the Indian Ocean but in the oceans such as South China Sea, Pacific Ocean and beyond. This will also provide India the ample space to grow and multiply its strategic position in the northeastern part of China with the close partners like South Korea and Japan. India and South Korea has already formulated a roadmap for introducing the joint production and research for military system. Well, India is targeting the $5 billion of defense exports in the coming years. And with better research and development and indigenous production, India can achieve this target as soon as possible. And Korea, which is one of the powerhouse of skilled labor force and high-end research and technology, can help India to achieve that target. As far as common interest among these countries is concerned, well, these are the following areas where both these countries find each other's relationship to be fruitful. The first one is the common development of Indo-Pacific area. As both these nations share this area, they have their own strategic, cultural, economic, defense, and other respective interests. So, these countries would like to have a common interest to frame a policy for the development of these common areas where their individual and mutual interest could be met. In this area, as we have seen, that Indo-Pacific has become a new theatre for the international diplomacy to engage itself. China has already expanded its footprint in this area. US has shifted its interest from Asia Pacific to Indo-Pacific, considering India to be pivot of Central Asia. Apart from this, both these countries share a lot of cultural ties. They have a good and ample level of soft diplomacy, which includes the entertainment, Bollywood, Korean pop, Buddhism, and others. They have the strategic expansion in the Indian Ocean, which includes the establishment of defense exercises and defense exchanges in the Indian Ocean. Both these countries are vocal about free and open trade through South China Sea, where China has been expanding its footprint in order to control the maritime movement, especially the trade of different nations. These countries are working together on the research and development as far as technology is concerned, most specific one being the upgradation of 4G to 5G telecommunication, where India is looking to expand a lot. These countries are looking towards expanding their trade in electronics, automobile, and energy. Well, as far as automobile and electronics are concerned, South Korea remains one of the best exporter to India. However, India has lost its prime position to China as far as Korean export destination is concerned. However, brands like LG, Samsung, or even the automobile brands like Hyundai and Kia Motors have been finding more areas and customer base in India itself. And lastly, both these nations share a common thought process as far as climate change and their role in United Nations is concerned. Both have been supportive towards the common yet differentiated responsibility. Korea has already set a very high and ambitious target for achieving the renewable energy, and so is India is also showing the same attitude towards the renewable energy and its development. As one of the recently developed country, South Korea, along with India, also wants to expand their partnership in the United Nations, most specifically being in the United Nations Security Council, where South Korea supports India's membership as a permanent member. As far as other areas of cooperation is concerned, both these countries have conducted a joint anti-piracy research and rescue exercise known as Sahyog Hyol Byog. Indian Army has already inducted the K9 Vajra self-propelled howitzer. It is a modern cannon which had the roots from South Korea's K9 Thunder howitzer. As far as economic relations are concerned, the trade between both these countries has expanded to $22 billion considering the small size of South Korea. And out of this 22 billion, India has been facing a trade deficit with respect to electronic goods and automobile. But the current pace of India's research and development, as well as indigenization under Make in India program, has expanded India's electronic base, because India has increased on mobile manufacturing by over 300% in the last 8 years. That shows that gradually the imports from South Korea is going to fall down. However, that does not mean that the trade is going to be at the lower side. India can leverage this domestic or the indigenization of electronic as well as automobile as a matter to reduce the trade deficit. On the other hand, India can focus on expanding the export sector to this country as far as IT and other service related products are concerned. And lastly, India has recently created the Korea Plus as a separate mechanism under Ministry of Commerce and Industry to attract the foreign direct investment in sectors like electronic, in automobile, as well as the telecommunication and related technologies. With this aspect, now we will move to the next article for the day. This article was published on page 1st of Delhi edition Hindu newspaper and talks about the recent employment figures which was published under the quarterly employment survey conducted under the Union Labour and Employment Ministry. We will read about this survey in much more detail with its benefit and limitation as far as this article and its relevance for prelims is concerned. The survey shows that there was an increase in the formal establishment sector as far as employment is concerned. And the survey says that there were about 2 lakh more jobs which were created in 9 sectors which are considered relevant for this survey. Apart from this, the survey also says that overall percentage of female workforce has increased up to 32% from the previous data of 29.3%. It simply means that overall, 1/3 of the employment in the formal sector is females. So this kind of data is important for your Indian society GS paper 1, role of women and the vulnerable section in GS paper 2, role of women as far as economic development is concerned in GS paper 3, and you can also use such kind of data for your essay paper. The survey has covered 9 important sectors including manufacturing, construction, trade, transportation, education, health, accommodation, restaurants, information technology and BPOs, and financial services sector. The data of this survey has covered the July to September of 2021. That is the period when there was a very high peak of COVID pandemic crisis in the country. And despite that fact, it has shown an improvement in the employment generation in the country, which shows that there is a high economic resilience in the country against the pandemic. However, this is just the one side of the coin and we will analyze this topic further. From the prelims perspective, it is important for us to understand that what is quarterly employment survey. Well, this survey is part of All India Quarterly Establishment Based Employment Survey, which is divided into 2 parts. First is Quarterly Employment Survey and the second one is Area Framed Establishment Survey. Any establishment here simply means an industry, a firm or a company. So any firm which has covered the unorganized segment, that is, it has worker less than 10. Let's say a confectionery shop, or let's say a barber shop where only 3 people or 4 people are employed. Although it is part of service sector, it will not be covered under QES. It will be covered under AFES. If an establishment is having 10 or more workers with contract, labor laws and others, that will be covered under Quarterly Employment Survey. This was established. The objective of this survey was to enable the government to frame a national policy on employment. However, despite many surveys, this policy yet has not been formulated. The best benefit of this survey is that it covers only those establishments which are having 10 or more employees. Basically, it covers the former sector and provide us the ample information of former sector, its growth and expansion in different areas, and the impact of economic growth and economic recession on employment generation. However, despite these basic benefits, the survey has certain limitations. First of all, as the survey only covers formal sector, it has discarded the 90% of the informal employees who are working in those areas which are not under this 9 sector or which does not have the 10 or more employees. This also includes the large unorganized sector and the people who are working there, including the agriculture labor. As there was a complete lockdown in major part of the country last year, what we have seen that this survey was actually telephonic based. So it was a questionnaire which was put to the different companies, firms, industries or others on a telephone conversation. And as this was a telephone conversation, the exact data is not verified. It provides only the demand side aspect, that how much a company, how much a firm, how much an industry demand employee from the market. On the other hand, we have periodic labor force survey, which is a supply side, that how much employee or a labor is demanding the employment. So understand this in a simple terms. Demand side simply means that how a company, a factory, a firm is demanding the labor. Supply side means that how labor is supplying himself, herself to a particular industry. So if a person is going to a factory to ask for employment, that is part of periodic labor force survey. But if a company or a factory is demanding the labor from the market, that is the demand side aspect, which is part of All India Quarterly Establishment Based Employment Survey. And last limitation of this survey is that it is turned out to be overhyped, as most of these sectors, that is manufacturing, IT, BPO, trade, transport, education and others, were either completely shut down or were going through the negative phase of their growth. Hence, increasing of extra 2 lakh employees turn out to be either overhyped or is based on faulty method of survey. So, based on this analysis, we can say that although this survey has some limitations, this survey and its data is very useful for the UPSC, and the basic understanding of this survey can help to solve a question in the prelim examination as well. With this discussion in place, let us now move to the next article for the day. This article was published on page 8th of Delhi edition Hindu newspaper and talks about the recent move taken by the government of Tamil Nadu in order to provide the occasion of Jallikattu and its practice despite the surge in COVID-19 cases in the state. The article has 2 different aspects. The first one, that it is important for us to understand the cultural aspect of Jallikattu, and is it important for the government to consider conducting such kind of public event when there is a rise in the pandemic? So, from that perspective, we will also look into some of the ethical aspect of conducting such kind of events despite the medical emergency. The relevance of this article is straightforward. In prelims perspective, we will understand this article for Indian culture. For mains, we will look into some of the ethical aspect of conducting public events despite the medical emergency. Well, Jallikattu is nothing but a bull taming competitive sport which is believed to be practiced since last 2500 years. In this event is conducted to honor the bull owners who rear them for mating purposes. It is a violent sport and there might be a loss of life to a person who is participating in this bull taming sport, as the contestant actually try to tame a bull to win a prize. If they fail, the bull owner actually wins the prize. The evidences of Jallikattu were found on the ancient Indian cave paintings as well as seal iconography. Some of the caves in Tamil Nadu has showcased the taming of animals including deer, horse, boar and bull. This is important because once UPSC asked in the prelim examination regarding the practices of horse rearing in Indus Valley civilization, whether it was there or not. So such kind of minute details may be asked in the prelim examination as far as India's art and culture is concerned. That is 2021 prelim examination. We have seen that there were 3 questions in history segment that were associated with the current affairs, most important one being from the Dholavira. Some of these evidences could also be seen from the representation on the terracotta seals. Even the old Silapatikaram, that is part of Sangam literature in Tamil language, also showcase the participation in Jallikattu. If we go through the image, well, this is the basic image where a person or a bull tamer, he is a participant, he is a contestant, is trying to tame a bull. If he wins, he will win the prize. If he loses, the bull owner actually wins the prize. If we go through the past experiences, well, these are some of the terracotta seals which shows that a person on the right side is trying to tame this bull on the left side. These evidences, however, does not explicitly mention the term Jallikattu but showcases the similar kind of practices in ancient India. With this cultural aspect, let us now move into the ethical dimension of Jallikattu as a public event. Well, as far as Jallikattu itself is concerned, it is more a matter of environmental ethics. It is more a matter of animal rights. But we will not consider that. This is a matter of conducting a public event during the pandemic. Well, these are the 7 dimensions. If similar kind of case study is asked in the mains examination, you can quote these kind of dimensions and you can then take your own stand. Well, the first issue is the ethical issue between the public leisure and the public health. In this, what we see is that on the one side, government is trying to push the entertainment industry. Government is trying to push the cultural aspect of an event, where people come together, celebrate their festival, and it becomes a part of social milieu. On the other hand, coming of public together may create the spreading of harmful viruses among them, which may ultimately lead to the death of innocent people. This will further aggravate the issue of public health. So government have to make a balance on this. The second one is the dilemma between cultural choices and personal protection. Well, Jallikattu is a public event. Thousands of people participate. On the other hand, COVID crisis is a matter of personal health protection. So whosoever participate in this event will get infected if they come in contact with the infected person. And this brings a kind of dilemma between whether we should conduct cultural events or whether we should focus on particular person's personal health. The third one is the local priority against the national emergency. Well, COVID crisis is a national emergency. Thousands, millions of people have already been infected with this virus. Lakhs of people have already lost their life. On the other hand, the government has tried to create a local priority over and above the national emergency. They are considering their own local festival to be more important than the national emergency of health. The fourth dimension could be long-term versus short-term benefit. Now, the conduction of this cultural event may bring a short-term benefit or happiness to the society. It may even bring a small economic benefit to the organizer and the participant. But if this event turn out to be a macro spreader of virus, that will create a long-term consequences for the entire state of Tamil Nadu. The fifth dimension could be the self-disciplined individuals versus the enforced rules. Well, India has a society where enforcement of rules from top down is considered to be far more important than the self-disciplined individuals. So if government tries to conduct such kind of events, government think that it is important to enforce the wearing of masks, it is important to enforce the social distancing, However, they do not have trust, or in fact, the people themselves does not have trust on the self-discipline behavior of themselves. People are not well aware, or they do not want to be aware and try to remain irresponsible towards the rising pandemic and its issues. So if government want to allow such kind of cultural events, either they can force the rules, which is less likely to be imposed in a country where self-disciplined individuals are rare to find. Then we have the dilemma between rule-based order versus cultural practices. Well, the permission to provide an event to be conducted as far as cultural practices are there is based on the rules. So government either allow or does not allow. But even if government does not allow, such kind of events are likely to be practiced in one way or the other. For instance, India is a country where child marriages have been banned for over a century now. But despite that, we see thousands of cases of child marriages every year. Despite having the rule-based order in the country, cultural practices are found to be conducted violating the basic human rights, and in this case, it is violating the health issues. And the last aspect could be the confusion or the dilemma between deontology or the consequentialism. Well, if government has allowed such kind of events to be conducted, they are following their duty. They have the duty of being the government of a welfare state. They are performing their duty just because the Constitution of India make them liable towards serving their citizens. On the other hand, the consequence of providing such kind of relief to conduct a public event despite the health pandemic can have different consequences. In this manner, the consequence could be the public health emergency or even the death of hundreds of people. So these are the basic issues which are there in conducting a public event. So this is not only limited to Jallikattu. Well, this can even be enforced to other things like marriages. It can also be expanded to other festivals like the upcoming Holi. So these kind of questions can be asked in the GS paper 4 in the near future. You can add other dimensions as well, or you can choose any of these dimensions to make your point more clear. With this discussion, now we will move to the last article for the day. This article got published on page 11th of Delhi edition Hindu newspaper and talks about the intensification of relationship between China and Sri Lanka, which have negative repercussions on India, Sri Lanka, or India's major role in Indian Ocean as a whole. Recently, there was a visit which was made by Chinese Foreign Minister to Sri Lanka, and he has said that no third party's interference would be allowed or would be tolerated between the China-Sri Lanka relationship. Technically and indirectly, he was targeting India as a major player in relationship between China and Sri Lanka. Even last month, there was a shifting of Chinese solar project from northern part of Sri Lanka, which is closer to India's interested area in Sri Lanka, that is Jaffna. And these solar projects were shifted to Maldives after the concern which were expressed by India to Sri Lanka. This shows that the role India plays in the local politics of Sri Lanka and how India is perceiving the close relation of China and Sri Lanka to be going against its own interest. From the article itself, it is important for us to understand that how deeper China is present as far as Sri Lanka is concerned. Well, Sri Lanka is holding a strategic position in India's neighborhood, and considering the strategic position of Sri Lanka, it is important for India, based on the history it had with Sri Lanka, to look into the domestic relations, domestic politics, as well as Sri Lanka's relationship with the outer world. The foreign direct investment which is coming to Sri Lanka is not a matter of concern to India. However, if it is coming to Sri Lanka from India's enemy state, that is China or Pakistan, makes up the huge concern for India's national security. China has been improving and deepening its footprint in Sri Lanka for various purposes. It has provided funds to build the Colombo port city, which was approved by the Sri Lanka government. This city will have Chinese special economic zone with more autonomy given to Chinese companies. China has already developed the Hambantota port and has got a lease for 99 years. Hambantota port is also seen as a strategic loss for India because lease given to China will go against the presence of India into the deeper economic markets of Sri Lanka. China has also been attracting Sri Lanka towards its Belt and Road Initiative, for which Sri Lanka has openly agreed and endorsed. But over the past few months, it has been observed that Sri Lanka is shifting anti-China because of the following parameters. The first one is the issue of sovereignty. The opposition party as well as the society groups have challenged the presence of China in Colombo port because it will promote the Chinese enclaves, that is, over presence of Chinese people inside the Sri Lankan territory. And in the future, it may also create the policies for Sri Lanka which are detrimental to Sri Lanka, its neighbors, and supportive to Chinese own interest. Then comes the debt trap. China has been providing foreign direct investment, easy loans, interest-free funds to Sri Lanka for various purposes. However, sometimes they are charging high interest. And because of this lucrative offer, Sri Lanka has borrowed huge amount of money. An inability to pay back has forced Colombo to hand over the Hambantota port. In Norman parlance, this is called as neo-imperialism or neo-colonialism. It has also been argued that Sri Lanka is one of the prime promoter of non-aligned movement. The opposition parties in China are thinking that too close relation with China may have negative repercussion on its all-weather friend India. And lastly, the ethnic dimension have their own issues. China has been very anti against the ethnic dimension and diversity of Sri Lanka. They have always been prominent supporter of the majoritarian, authoritarian and Buddhist ruling class in Sri Lanka, which is against the minorities or the Tamil speaking people in the country. Therefore, the people in the northern part of Sri Lanka have been anti-China for a while now. Because of the overemphasis on China and its deeper penetration into the Sri Lankan politics and economics, India has created a counter initiatives in order to reduce Chinese influence in South Asia as well as deepen its own ties with its neighbors. And these policy includes the neighborhood policy, which was announced in 2014, regional connectivities with the neighboring countries including Bangladesh, Bhutan, India and Nepal motor vehicle agreement, India, Myanmar, Thailand trilateral agreement, Indo-Bangladesh protocol on inland water transit and trade, Kaladan multimodal project, currency swap agreement recently being conducted even by Sri Lanka. India has also been a net security provider. It has provided numerous defense equipments, including the war frigates for various navies. It has developed various naval bases, such as the Changai Naval Base in Singapore, that will provide India the upper hand in net security provider in the southern part of its own territory. India has also conducted numerous defense exercises and joint exercises with its neighbors like Malabar Exercise, Equivalent, Selenex and others. It has provided the humanitarian assistance and disaster relief operation to its neighbors. These operations included the operations such as Sahayata, in which India has responded to Mozambique to provide relief operations. In Operation Velina, Indian Navy has provided assistance to the population of Madagascar. All these initiatives has somehow countered the Chinese presence in South Asia as well as the Indian Ocean island countries. But this is not going to be enough. India has to go a notch higher. And for this, India has to invest more funds as far as infrastructure development, and India has to be very open for its economic support to these island countries. Apart from this, India must and should, as soon as possible, provide the financial assistance to these countries in order to fight the economic recessions and also bring these economy back on track so that the trade relations could be improved further. With this discussion in place, now I will leave you with question of the day.